Buenos dias und herzlich willkommen bei Gate 7, deinem Podcast über Fernweh und Fotografie. In dieser Show geht es um Menschen, für die Reisen mehr ist als Spaß und Erholung. Freue dich auf praktische Tipps und Tricks, wie du tief in fremde Kulturen eintauchst und lerne, deine Abenteuer in bewegenden Bildern festzuhalten, egal mit welcher Kamera. Bist du bereit? Dann los, lass uns abheben mit deinem Gastgeber, Kai Beermann.
Die internationalen Wochen bei Gate 7 gehen weiter. Nach dem Interview mit Sean Tucker in der Vorwoche gibt es heute ein weiteres Interview auf Englisch mit Valérie Jardin. Ja, Valérie braucht man, glaube ich, nicht mehr lange vorzustellen. Wer sich mit der Streetfotografie auseinandersetzt und Podcasts liebt, der wird an Hit the Streets nicht vorbeigekommen sein. Eine Show, die sie allerdings im vergangenen Jahr eingestellt hat. Nach knapp 300 Folgen war Schluss. Und wie sie sagt, man soll auf dem Höhepunkt aufhören, dann, wenn es am meisten Spaß macht. Und was ganz interessant war, ist, auch Valérie sagt, dass sie, während sie die Show am Laufen hatte, eigentlich sehr selten von ihrem Publikum gehört hat und dass sie dann, als sie das Showende verkündet hat, plötzlich von allen Seiten Nachrichten bekommen hat. Also ja, etwas, das ich auch kenne. Wir Podcaster sind ja manchmal ziemlich einsam hier vor unserem Mikrofon oder hinter unserem Mikrofon, je nachdem, welche Perspektive man einnimmt. Ja, und vielleicht auch eine gute Gelegenheit an dieser Stelle für einen Aufruf. Natürlich freue auch ich mich immer, von dir zu hören. Wenn du also schon öfter mal mit dem Gedanken gespielt hast, mir eine Mail zu schicken mit Anregungen, Ideen oder was auch immer, dann tu dies ruhig an info@gate7.de, 7 ausgeschrieben, nicht als Zahl. Und wenn du Gate 7 auf andere Art und Weise unterstützen möchtest, dann gibt es dafür verschiedene Möglichkeiten. Zum einen kannst du den Podcast an Freunde, Bekannte, die sich ebenfalls für das Thema Fotografie interessieren, weiterempfehlen, die Folgen auf Social Media teilen oder mir eine Rezension auf iTunes oder bei Spotify hinterlassen. All das hilft, den Podcast noch ein bisschen bekannter zu machen. Und wenn du Lust hast, noch näher und aktiver an den Podcast und mich heranzurücken, dann kannst du dies im Rahmen von unserem Projekt Abenteuer Reportagefotografie tun, das ich gemeinsam mit Thomas Jones von den Fotologen mache. Da dreht sich alles um das Geschichtenerzählen mit Bildern und die Streetfotografie nimmt dabei natürlich auch einen ganz, ganz großen Raum ein. Abenteuer-reportagefotografie.de oder klick einfach auf den Link in deiner Podcast-App in den Shownotes. Wir würden uns freuen, wenn du da mal vorbeischaust. Da wartet eine ganze Menge auf dich, keine starre Mitgliedschaft. Du kannst jederzeit anfangen und du kannst auch jederzeit wieder gehen. Ohne Verpflichtung, ohne Risiko. Eine aktive Community mit über 80 Teilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmern wartet auf dich. Ja, und wenn du nur bei den Aufnahmen für den Gate 7 Podcast live mit dabei sein möchtest, dann kannst du das natürlich auch tun. Das ist das etwas reduziertere Paket, was wir anbieten. Dann hast du die Gelegenheit, im Anschluss an die Interviews den Gästen deine Fragen zu stellen. Auf diese Art und Weise ist auch dieses Interview mit Valérie entstanden. Ich würde mich sehr freuen, wenn du den Podcast unterstützt, wenn er dir denn gefällt und du regelmäßig zuhörst. Für mich ist das Ganze über die Jahre zu einem echten Herzensprojekt geworden. Dies ist mittlerweile die 300. Folge und ich weiß gar nicht, wie viele Stunden ich insgesamt schon in dieses Projekt reingesteckt habe, aber das ist auch egal. Ich würde es auch tun, wenn mir nur 20 oder 30 Menschen zuhören würden. Dennoch ist es natürlich mal schön, wenn auch etwas zurückkommt. Last but not least gibt es in diesem Jahr auch noch die Gelegenheit, live mit Thomas und mir in die Welt der Fotografie einzutauchen und Fotografie zu erleben. Zum einen am Rande der Fotopia im Oktober. Da haben wir 2 Termine für Streetfotografie Workshops in Hamburg. Einmal am 12. und am 17. Am 17. ist gerade noch ein Platz frei geworden und am 12. gibt es noch ein paar mehr Plätze. Und am letzten Augustwochenende findet dann zum zweiten Mal unser Reportagefotografie-Workshop im Rheingau statt. Dann lautet das Motto: Fotografie trifft auf Genuss. In einer der traditionsreichsten und schönsten Weinregionen Deutschland genießen wir dann nicht zu knapp den leckeren Riesling, der hier gemacht wird, und verbinden das Ganze mit einer Einführung in die Reportagefotografie. Also dafür gibt es auch noch Plätze. Schau mal in deinen Kalender und dann wäre es klasse, wenn du mit dabei bist. So, jetzt aber zurück zum Interview mit Valérie Jardin. Nachdem ich dir erzählt habe, dass sie ihren Podcast mittlerweile eingestellt hat, blicken wir natürlich nicht nur zurück, sondern auch nach vorne auf ihr neues Buch Streetfotografie, 75 Übungen für bessere Bilder heißt das. Und es ist ein wirklich tolles Buch geworden, das inspiriert, rauszugehen mit der Kamera, um aktiv an den eigenen Fähigkeiten und an dem fotografischen Blick zu arbeiten. Ich habe mich auf jeden Fall mächtig gefreut, sie zum zweiten Mal hier im Podcast begrüßen zu dürfen. Ihre fröhlich authentische Art ist eine Bereicherung für jedes Interview und wenn du den ersten Teil noch nicht gehört hast, dann rate ich dir auch da nochmal reinzuhören. Aber jetzt ohne weitere Vorrede direkt hinein in das Interview mit Valérie Jardin. Viel Spaß! Hello, Valérie. Welcome back to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Valérie, first question I got to ask you. You stopped your own podcast, Hit the Streets, a while ago. Are you missing podcasting already?
Well, I've been invited in so many podcasts since I have a little bit more time for that now that I don't miss all the work involved in it. You know how much work podcasting is. I was 8 years of podcasting nonstop, never missed a release. And with my travel schedule, it was becoming really, it was becoming a chore. And when I quit my commercial photography business and I devoted 100% of my photography time into inspiring others and teaching. Well, the podcast was kind of part of that, but I had said, if any of this becomes a job or feels like a job, I'll quit. And the podcast was starting to become a chore. And then, that's it. I'm not going to force myself to do it if I don't love it 100%. So it was a good decision. I mean, that was 8 years of, giving and finding guests and releasing episodes and trying to fit everything in my crazy travel schedule. And I was done. So I do miss the interaction. It's funny because when you podcast, and there was an audience in over 150 countries, and the podcast was probably at its peak when I quit. Then all of a sudden, people were just emailing me and sending me messages from all over the world of how much they missed it. And I said, where were you all people while I was doing this? It would have been nice to hear more from the audience, but usually the audience is pretty quiet until you disappear. And then they say, oh, we really miss it. So, but it was good. It was nice to hear that people really loved it. So, yeah. And sometimes it's good to just end something on a high note rather than when it dies off. So it was good.
Yeah, exactly. I can really relate to what you were saying. It's like running a podcast. It's a lot of work. You have to put the research in. You have to find guests, and yeah, it takes up so much time. But at the same time, it's great fun to do it. Yeah. But also, what you said, that even though you had this huge podcast and this huge audience, you very rarely heard from the people.
You feel very invisible as a podcaster.
Exactly. I feel the same. It's like I know that people are listening. If you look at the statistics, you see that it's not just your mom or dad listening in, but
yeah.
But still, the feedback is not always there. But I'm guilty myself. I love podcasts. I listen to lots of podcasts, but it's like very rarely that I reach out to the podcaster and send some feedback. So it's all good.
Yeah.
Valérie, you started your own podcast, Hit the Streets, in 2016. I just looked it up. It's almost 200 episodes, right?
Yes, but before that, I was the host of Street Focus on the TWIP network for a few years too. So, and I didn't even give myself a break in between the two shows. I ended one on a Thursday, and I started the other one under my own brand the following Thursday. So yeah, so there's Street Focus. I don't know, a few hundred episodes there, and then Hit the Streets. So yeah, that was It's a lot of hours. And I think both of them are still available. I know Hit the Streets for sure is, because I'm still paying for it. So I'll have to figure out a way to make it available without having to pay the monthly fees now. But yeah.
Yeah, but it's a good idea to leave it on, because it's such a huge archive you piled up over the years, and it's timeless content. It doesn't matter if you're listening a couple of years from now. It's still so practical that you can apply it to your photography just at any time. So
that's true.
And you can look back on so many conversations you had with great photographers. Yeah. What are your fondest moments over all the years?
Well, actually, people ask me that, and although I've interviewed some really fascinating guests that everybody would, knows some pretty famous people. Sometimes it's actually the most unknown photographers that would share projects with me that I love the most. So I think they're all very special. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I can't really pick a favorite. They were all special, but the best memories are usually the ones that, were photographers that nobody has ever heard of, and are sharing their passion and talk about a special projects that they worked on. So those were pretty special.
All right. Yeah, difficult questions. I wouldn't know how to answer it myself. So
you'd have to say it's me, your favorite guest.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely one of the most. It is the most popular episode. I told you before we started the recording. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Valérie, stopping something like your podcast, which took up a huge amount of time, on the other hand, freed up a lot of time for you. Mm-hmm. How do you make use of all the time that you have at your hand now?
Well, it gave me more time to be the guest on other podcasts. And I turned down so many opportunities, because when you're podcasting, it seems like the last thing you want to do is be on somebody else's podcast recording again. So I've been more active doing that, and grabbing those opportunities, which I find so much fun, because when you're the podcaster, it's about sharing somebody else's work. Whereas when you're the guest, it's about your vision, your passion, and sharing your work. And I love doing that. So for me, it's another way of reaching out and teaching. Otherwise, well, I think also I quit the podcast during, the pandemic, when we were not traveling and everything was online. I was just so tired of online that podcasting was yet another online thing. And so now the workshops have started again. So I'm really starting to appreciate not having that mad race in between international trips, where I have to get several episodes in the can before I get on a plane again and getting them scheduled and everything. So that part, I'm really enjoying that time, because I've been writing and I want to write more. And so I find that every little bit of time that I can free up for writing is good too. So, and I could be writing a lot more than I do, but I have actually published about 16 books in 5 years. So a lot of them are smaller ebooks. Some are bigger books that have been translated in other languages. But I love that way of sharing. And the ebooks have just been great, because I actually write them on the software that they will be released. And so I write them on airplanes usually. And so that's another quick way of sharing for people who may never be able to come on a workshop or see me speak at a conference. So I find that there is a little bit of there's something for everyone, basically. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Writing books is a good transition, because we want to talk about your book. It's called Streetfotografie, 75 Übungen für bessere Bilder. That's the German title, because it just came out in Germany. 75 lessons or assignments for street photography that keeps you busy or gives inspiration, idea what to photograph out on the streets. You said that now you enjoy it much more, that you have all this time to devote to your teaching. What was the original idea that made you write this book?
Well, one of the most common thing I hear is, oh, I don't shoot enough, or I want to go out, but I don't know what to shoot, or I don't know what to look for. So it was hearing that over and over again from so many people all over the world that gave me the idea of writing this assignment book, because at least now there is no more excuse. You can pick an assignment in the book and then get out the door with your camera, whether you have 15 minutes or 5 hours, it doesn't matter. And so there are 75 exercises, and they're kind of progressive. It starts with easier. It's not a how-to. I wrote that book, the how-to street photography. This is really for people, and it could be for total beginners too, but and that's why I made it from easier to more challenging, and then some other exercises series and stuff at the end. But people can either start from the beginning, and if they're new, or just pick at random. And that's what people tell me they've been doing, actually, because everyone who is on my workshop, usually they bring the book so I can sign it. So I asked them, I said, how do you use the book? And so a lot of people have the version. I mean, this is the English version. The Italian version also has the same cover, but the German version has a different cover. And so what people have been telling me, they have it in electronic version, and they keep it on their phone, because if they're out and they're in a rut, or they don't see anything, or they don't know where to start, they can pick an exercise during their photo walk. And then at home, they have it on their desk with little Post-it notes, because they can go back. So it's more than 75 exercises, because a lot of those you will do over and over and over again, year after year, and see how much better you can do it. You are at it by practicing and practicing again. So that's how people have been using it. And I was floored, because I didn't do much research when I started writing it to know if something like this had been done. And I think there is a similar book, but I never even looked at it. But that's the one thing, when you start writing a book, if there is something in the similar topic, you don't even want to look at it, because you don't want to be influenced by it. So there is a similar book. I think it's 52 exercises or something like that. I don't remember. And I can't even remember the name of the person who wrote it. But so there was a similar book, like an exercise book, but I thought that's it for something like street photography that is so popular. I was surprised that there wasn't a whole bunch of them already out there. And so I started writing it for Rocky Nook in the US. And it was so easy in a way, because, and I illustrated every example, every assignment with my own photographs. So then I realized, well, I mean, and actually I'm thinking of part 2, because I came up with so many more exercises, and those are a lot of techniques that, I teach hands-on during the workshops. And so it was really fun earlier this month in Rome, working with some students, and one of them said, "Oh, that exercise, I don't think is in your book." I'm like, "Yeah, you got a point. I have to start updating it." It's actually been really fun. Sometime the way I wrote it too, I found the photograph that would illustrate the exercise before I even thought of the exercise. And then it's like, yeah, that could be an exercise. So then I kind of did it reverse, which was kind of an interesting process.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you have a certain image and you write around, or you think of what kind of concept is behind that image.
Yeah. So
great idea. And even though something like this already exists, it's not. If you write it, it's with your own twist, and it's your personality that you bring to the table, and that's what really shines through. You are a very you have a unique style, if you can say that. You're a very minimalist photographer. You restrict yourself, and you have a clear artistic vision. How did that develop? When you started out as a photographer, you started out as a commercial photographer, and then found your way into street photography. Was it a process that led you there? The focus on one camera, one lens, and all that?
Well, as a commercial photographer, and I started late. I was my late 20s when I actually picked up a real camera. I mean, I always had a camera like everybody else, but I started late, and then right away started doing portraits, and then one thing led to another. I was working for clients, and I pretty much did it all. I mean, from weddings to food photography, architectural photography, and it is actually that type of photography that I enjoyed the most, working for clients, doing architectural stuff, and shooting interiors for designers, that kind of stuff, and quite a bit of food photography as well. So that you have to carry a lot of gear because you need the tripod, and you need different lenses, and I always thought that was just the most annoying part, is to carry all that gear. Mm. And then when 10 years ago exactly this year is when I quit my commercial photography business to just live my dream of teaching workshops and traveling for my work. Then it's about the same time that the X100 camera came out from Fujifilm. So at the time I was already doing street photography, usually when I traveled. And I think a lot of people start that way. They only see opportunities when they travel, and not so much in their own home environment, like their city or small towns. And so then I started doing street photography just around here, and I live in the Twin Cities and near just outside Minneapolis, in Minnesota. But I would usually do that type of photography when I go back home to France. And then the X100 camera came out, and I bought it. And right away I sold my last DSLR was a 5D Mark II, and I sold everything overnight. Back then, 9 years ago, you could still get good money for your gear. So I had all the L lenses and everything. All the stuff I was using commercially, I still had that, and that's what I was using. But once I started using one camera, one lens, and that camera, you cannot remove the lens. It's a rangefinder type camera, and that's the camera with which I shot most of the pictures in that book. That was it. I'm like, why would I bother myself with carrying any extra gear when I can have a camera on my shoulder, a couple extra batteries, and that's it. That's all I need for the day. I was already a minimalist when I was shooting with the Canon. When I was out on the street, I would have usually a pancake lens on it. And that's it. I didn't need extra batteries back then, because the Canon 5D Mark II could probably go a whole week with one battery. Now that's, those smaller cameras need smaller batteries, and you need more of them. But it was so liberating. And the day actually that I realized that's all I needed, I was on my way to France via Iceland, and I had the whole backpack with the 24 to 70, 70 to 200, and everything in between that the just in case lenses that we carry and never used, and the 5D Mark II, and I had the X100S at the time that I had just bought. And just at the time to leave for the airport, I'm very spontaneous. The spontaneous decision to leave the backpack behind and just go with the X100. So there I was in Iceland at 23 millimeter, 35 equivalent on a full frame. And it was so amazing. I was so happy. And then I came back and sold my other gear. I didn't need it for work anymore, since I wasn't shooting for clients. I don't shoot for clients anymore. I shoot for me, and then I share the love. And it was extremely liberating. So that was it. And I've been shooting with that camera ever since. And I became an official ambassador for Fujifilm USA. We call them ex-photographers, which doesn't mean that we're not photographers anymore. That's just because of the X series. So I became an official photographer about a year later, and And so I've had every new edition of this camera since then. I was actually at the launch in the UK, February 2020, when the V came out. I was invited by Fujifilm Japan to be the official photographer at the press conference. So that was quite cool. And so I've been shooting with that. I have another camera body because I like using lens baby lenses too. I think they're so much fun. But that's it. When I travel, I have two X100 cameras, two of the same, one for backup, just in case I lose one or it breaks, and that's it. That's all I carry.
Hmm. Yeah, it's liberating. I feel the same about gear. I prefer to have just one camera and one lens and stick to that and really develop the vision that's according to the lens you're using, and
there's great power and limitations, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Valerie, the other day I was recording an interview with Sean Tucker, and he has one great quote from Gary Winogrand in his book. It goes along the lines that he said, "I don't have anything to say in any picture. My only interest in photography is to see what something looks like as a photograph." Mm-hmm. So just the joy of photographing, the aesthetics, the visual experience. What is it in your photography that you're looking for, or that you try to communicate?
I really follow my heart. I love people. I love cities. I love to get lost on purpose. I love to be surprised. So I'm completely open to opportunities when I'm on the street. So it's really the beauty of the everyday. And life is so beautiful. Everyday moments are so beautiful. I'm out there to look for the beauty in everyday life. I'm not a photojournalist. I'm not a paparazzo. I just look for the beauty in the everyday. So I don't know. Even if I don't, and you know how it is. There's a lot of times where you see the moment, but you won't capture it because it happened so quickly or you were too far away or whatever. But just the fact of seeing is so amazing, because so many people look but don't see, and so many people walk by beautiful moments and don't even notice them. And I hear that actually on workshops all the time. I hear students say, "Oh, I just saw this amazing thing." It could be, I don't know, somebody with a dog or some couple kissing or whatever, but I missed it. I'm like, no, you didn't get the picture, but you didn't miss it. And that's amazing, because that's more than 99% of the people walking by can say. You actually saw the moment, and right there there is learning. Now we can't capture. I mean, it's so difficult. It's such a difficult genre of photography. We cannot capture every moment that moves us. But just the fact of seeing is just amazing. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, learning how to see, it takes a lot of practice, a lot of work. Yeah. You have to put in the hours and the miles walking up the streets up and down. Valerie, and you already mentioned that, or you described your way of approaching photography as a very minimalistic way, and you seem like a very centered, very focused photographer who knows what she wants. Is that...
Go ahead.
The thought was, or the question is, like, how did you gain that confidence in yourself to know what you wanted as an artist? Because I think that's what many photographers out there are struggling with, especially if they also engage in social media, put out their work there, get the negative feedback, and then maybe don't follow what they want, but try to please someone else.
Oh, and that is huge. The day that you actually don't care about pleasing other people, you're so much happier. I really do feel that social media can be very harmful. I mean, it's so great to share your work, but it can be harmful. And several ways. First of all, there are mean people out there, and it can be really hurtful, and that's just the way the world is. And that's not only with posting your pictures. Trust me, people can be awful. The minute they feel a little threatened or they're a little envious, people can be really, really awful, especially when you write and do other things like that. But another way that can be harmful is that you tend to shoot for the likes and worry more about what the audience wants to see versus what your heart tells you to do. And I find that once you get over that, because honestly, unless you're shooting for an audience that is a potential client, commercial client, like your audience is brides and grooms and you are wedding photographers. And then of course you're going to post and show what they want to see. But most of the people I'm sure listening right now are photographers, and what they post on social media is what they do for themselves. I mean, once you realize that the only person you need to please is yourself, and you own that and you feel good about it, and you share what really moves you and what makes you happy, social media can become really fun. And then you will find your own voice, because I know exactly what pictures will get the most likes, for example. I kind of know what people want to see and what respond to. And however, they're not usually the photographs that move me the most or that I love the most. And as a photographer, you're the only one who knows the merit that goes behind a photograph. There are photographs that I absolutely love because, well, first of all, I was there, and I know how difficult that shot was to get. That fraction of a second that I captured in one frame, without the subject noticing me and knowing that I got it in one frame. That made me so happy at the moment, and that stays with you. People have no clue. People don't even know how. All my work is 100% candid, but that's not all that's out there. There's a lot of street photography that is staged, and it's not street photography anymore. So when you know that all your work is 100% candid, that you captured that moment, it's never happened before, that will never happen again, that special moment, it feels good, and then you want to share. And but really, it's about shooting for yourself, not for the likes, not for an audience. And if you're passionate about it, people will feel it too. So it's hard to put into words, but I think everybody kind of got it, because I think we all fell into that. This didn't get as many likes as I thought, and blah, blah, blah. And that's so toxic. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be toxic, and you really have to protect yourself and protect your photography once you go out there. And I think, what you said is just right. Like, don't listen to the wrong voices, follow your own voice. And eventually the best work comes out of yourself. Like it's all about you. If you take the camera in your hands, you want to create work that you are proud of and that you enjoy yourself, and try to communicate something that's important to you to others, and engage that in an honest way. Valérie, street photography is probably one of the most popular, but yet also one of the most difficult genres, because you go out there, you can shoot candidly, try not to get noticed, but every now and then people will notice you, and they might wonder what you're doing out there photographing strangers. Yeah, that can happen. What would you say to someone starting out in street photography and having that fears?
Well, first of all, if you do it right and you do it respectfully, when I mean respectfully, not being in people's face. And even if you're really close to people, doesn't mean you have to be in people's faces. I mean, sometimes I get so close to people, I can touch them. But but I'm not in their face. And if someone, so first of all, know that what you're doing is important. So if you do it right, you do it respectfully, and you capture everyday moments of everyday life in a respectful way, in a beautiful way, where there is a lot of emotion, it's important because it has historical value. I mean, when we look at the work of Vivian Maier, for example, that was discovered, that may have never been discovered, actually. We're so lucky to find it. Look at how much we learn about Chicago in the years that she was in Chicago and all her travels. So we learn a lot. And so just imagine, your work someday will be a reflection of the 2022 and so forth, and how life was at the time. And we learned so much about the way people dressed and the cars on the streets and that type of thing. So I think that's very important. And just do it respectfully. Really, it's not about capturing. It's about capturing the beauty of everyday life, not moments of crisis, not making fun of people with your photograph, that kind of thing. I mean, if you do humor should be subtle, not making fun of. And making fun of is pretty easy, but the humor that really is the real street photography humor is actually difficult. And that's one of the exercises in my book, might be the most difficult one, because it's really subtle. That's much more difficult. So just do it respectfully. Don't be confrontational. There are times where people will be confrontational and say, "Oh, this is you have no right to photograph me," blah blah blah, and just appease the situation, explain to them what you're doing. If they don't want to hear anything, just walk away. Don't ever be confrontational back. And even, when we're most of the time, we're 100% in our rights to photograph people in public places. But I always feel that people still, no matter where, still have the right to not want to be photographed. And if they notice you and you photograph them and they're upset, well, then why would you want to keep the picture in the first place, if it was such a bad experience for the subject? So there are so many ways to deal with the situation. Just no matter what, never be confrontational back if people are, because that will happen.
Yeah. And that's
sorry.
great.
I'm not even sure what was the original question, but
no, just how to overcome your fears in street photography, and that's the right answer. And don't give.
You don't have to be super close either. There are so many ways to approach this. You can be a minimalist street photographer. You can do street portraits where actually you do have an interaction with people. And a lot of introverts actually, surprisingly, like that better, because then they can breathe again, because then the person knows they're being photographed and they do have an interaction. Even if they're not posing them, they're just still capturing a street portrait, but the subject knows they're being photographed and they feel a little bit better about it. Or if you want to do some silhouettes, or you can do street photography without your subjects ever being recognizable. I even wrote a book about that, because a lot of people are concerned. They don't want to post photographs of strangers that can be recognizable, and that's totally fine. There's so many ways to approach it that can work.
Mm-hmm. We are all different, and your book actually, all the assignments that are in there, there's something for everyone. There's something for extroverts, for introverts, and you mentioned a couple of examples. Maybe that's a good time to dip into your book and maybe talk about a couple of the assignments in particular. So maybe we start with one assignment that is more maybe for introverts. You have one assignment where you talk about photographing people from behind. It's not be in the face, but from the other side. Can you explain a little bit what's this technique about, and how do you make, or how do you take good pictures of people from behind? Because not just a random shot from a person from behind is a good street photo.
That's right. It's usually a lot of beginner street photographers. You'll see when you look at their portfolio, there are a lot of people walking away. And that makes sense. They're not gonna yell at you or run after you if they're walking away. They didn't see you. But it's so much more difficult to make it work because you don't have the facial expression. You don't have the emotion that you'd have if the face was visible. So when you photograph somebody walking away, it better be a strong, strong subject. So a lot of things come to mind. It can be a couple walking away hand in hand. It could be somebody walking down the street with an umbrella. I mean, there's so many, somebody with a really cool hat. So you have to have a really strong subject to have a compelling photograph, somebody walking away or from the back. So it works, but you have to be very discerning as to what will make a good subject walking away. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, very, very challenging. It sounds easy, but to really identify a subject worthwhile taking a photo of is hard work. And you just look out for the details and look out for the special gesture or thing they wear, and then it can work just great to take pictures of people from behind. Another example we touched on already, or you mentioned, is humor, which is very, very difficult. These moments where things come together on the street, and you have to be very, very alert to see these moments. Can you elaborate a little bit on that concept?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, humor should never be making fun of someone. You should the photograph. That the resulting photograph, and especially if you're going to post it and publish it, you should feel completely comfortable with it, as if it was you or somebody in your family. So it's really not about making fun. That's really, really important. I find that subtle humor is much more difficult, but there are situations that are more likely to yield some good humor. For example, people with dogs will always, that's a good way to start. There's often a situation where, the relationship between the dog and his owner can be really funny. Expressions and the dog's expression could be even dogs alone, the street photography, as long as there is life, could doesn't have to have people in the shot. I have a whole book on dogs, so with or without people. But one of my favorite shots was shot actually in Berlin, and it might be one of the examples in the book, where the guy is on the ladder and his hand, he's fixing like a marquee in front of the light up marquee or sign. Mm-hmm. And it's a hand. The sign is a hand, and his arm of the same side is actually an extension of that hand, or that hand is actually an extension of his arm. And when I saw that, I mean, honestly, I just could not believe my eyes. I walked by, saw a guy on a ladder. I had the camera in my hand, but that wasn't going to be a picture. And that's when I stopped and looked up, and I saw that he had his arm right behind that hand, and it made an extension of his arm. I just could not believe my luck. Good thing my camera was on, and I didn't have a lens cap, because I just had the time to capture the moment. He has no clue what I saw. Although he sees me, he has no clue what I saw, because from where he is, he couldn't think that I was, what was happening. And seriously, a second later, his hand was down and he was going down the ladder. So that moment was once in a lifetime, and it will always be one of my favorite shots, because talk about not only being at the right place at the right time, but having the sense to point the camera immediately and capture that frame. I was so happy. I could have probably put the camera down for the rest of the day, because there's nothing that was going to beat that shot. So that's humor, but again, it's not making fun. I mean, there's a lot of humor in, I was just in Rome. There are a lot of humor in the nuns on the run. I just shot that where they're really in a hurry and they're walking away, and but you can tell they're running. And so there is humor, but again, it's not making fun. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great picture, and it's in the book, the one that you described in Berlin with the man. Yeah, it's a very unique moment, and one of these shots, as you said, that you don't capture every day, and street photography is not about capturing these kinds of moments every day you hit the streets. And I think that's also important to keep in mind, and not to get frustrated when you come back and from a day shooting on the street and you just have more ordinary moments, beautiful moments, but not this kind of moments like this.
That's the ones that are going to stand out in your year of hitting the streets every day. You'll have a handful of pictures that you'll be really proud of, that really will stand out from the rest, even if you shoot every day. If you have 50 keepers at the end of a day, the bar is too low. That's what I always say. Because there's no way. It's impossible. If it was that easy, it would be really boring. The reason why it's such a captivating genre of photography is because it is so difficult. You have control over your gear and your vision. You don't have any control over what is happening. And so it's all about being discerning and being able to react quickly while remaining invisible.
You can push your luck a little bit with persistence and training your eye, and also learning about human psychology. It's because we as humans, we are creatures of habits. And sometimes that when something happens, or you can anticipate something that is going to happen, or you can be sure or pretty sure that something is going to repeat itself. And one of these things are gestures of people that you also talk about in your book, and which I find a very fascinating subject to photograph or to concentrate on in your street photography. What does that assignment make so interesting for you?
Well, again, you're right. It's about learning about human behavior. Just like if you're a bird photographer, you better know about the birds and their habits and everything. So it's a little bit of the same. If you're photographing somebody who's sitting at a cafe, kind of daydreaming and having a cigarette, which is so amazing when you catch that, because usually people are buried on their phone, and I don't take pictures of people looking at their phone. It's so mundane and starting to be difficult. It's actually a challenge now, not to. So it's a part of the hunt to look for people that are, daydreaming on their breaks instead of being, on Twitter. And so, so you see, for example, somebody at a cafe having a cigarette and kind of, looking out by themselves. So wait for the moment, either the gesture, the elegant smoker's gesture, or when the smoke is coming out of their mouth. The moment that really tells the story. Children, when they're playing, they will do things over and over again, usually. So if you missed it, well, just wait a minute. The kid on the scooter is probably going to come by again. And then you're prepared. You could get the shot at the right time. So yes, it's a lot of anticipation. And it's not about spray and pray, like we say, just machine gunning it until you get it, because then you're going to draw attention to yourself and the person will notice you. So it's really about being prepared and not bringing attention to yourself. So it's
we could go on and on. Valérie, you have so many examples in your book, and what's really great about it is that it covers topics for beginners, for more advanced street photographers, and every time you take up the book, you find something new, something challenging to shoot. And I think it's important to have these kind of assignments, and especially when you go out and you don't feel that there's anything that you can shoot, to have something to fall back on, to give yourself a task.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's harder to get in the zone, or you feel like you're in a rut, but you're not going to get all your inspiration by looking at other people's pictures, and you're certainly not going to get better by looking at other people's pictures. So the only way you're going to get better is by being out there and getting the shots yourself.
Yeah.
And really finding your own voice too. Don't go with a shot in mind. Use the book as a way to apply a technique or to look for something that you've never looked for before, but always find your own voice. Don't go out thinking, oh, I want to get that shot, because then it's somebody else's shot. It's not yours. So really be open and try to find your own way of seeing the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, find your own way. Valérie, when you think about or you are in contact with many street photographers on your workshops, and people write to you on social media, so you have a good idea of what's going on in the street photography scene. What do you think is something that many street photographers don't pay enough attention to?
People are just not discerning enough. I think they have the right idea. They find a really great backdrop, for example. The light is beautiful, and then they know they just need to capture the human element walking through that light. And they'll click at the first person that walks by without being discerning. And not everybody makes a good subject. So we all have our own aesthetic of what is going to make a subject. But if you're traveling, why would you want to photograph a tourist? If you're traveling, try to, photograph locals only. And it's about authenticity. If you're in a business district, well, photographing somebody in a business suit going to work is probably going to be a better fitting subject than a mom with 3 kids. So, always look for the subject that fits the environment you're in, to give your photographs, to tell really the story of the place too. Mm-hmm. So it's really about being discerning. Like people with backpacks, for example, make awful subjects. Having that backpack, whether you're doing, especially when you're in a silhouette situation, it can look really bad. Or so those are things that I eliminate right away. If somebody's walking by with a backpack, or my students hear me say that all the time. If I'm showing them something or saying what would make the best possible subject, and then somebody comes by with a backpack, I'm like, oh, darn backpack, that's not going to work. It ruins the shot. Or people on their phone, it's like, oh no, the phone again. So there's so many things that fall into place to make a strong photographs. But yeah, that's why you don't get them every day.
Yeah. You helped so many people become better street photographers, but even as an instructor and teacher of street photography, you never stop learning yourself. Mm-hmm. What are some subjects or some questions that you are currently wrestling with or thinking about a lot? Is there something?
No, I do everything from the heart. So I'm, as long as I have a camera, I'm happy. I'm happy if I don't capture anything that day, because at least I was out there and I experienced it. There is always something. There is always a story that's going to develop. There is always a story you haven't seen before. That's the thing too. You will never repeat yourself. You can repeat yourself if in your own city. Like sometimes that's the problem when you, it's easier in a way when you're traveling, because everything is new. Every backdrop is going to be different. Every street will give you amazing stories. It can also be overwhelming, but you should always do your best work in the city that you know best. And sometimes, and also because you have the opportunity to go again and again and again, I can think of places that I had to visit a dozen times until I could get the right subject in that light at the right moment, because all the other times the subject wasn't strong enough, and I'd rather not shoot, not even press the shutter, than press the shutter on a subject that's just not going to make the strongest possible photograph. So always look for the strongest possible subject, or envision what would make the strongest subject in this frame. Sometime something even better will come along. But the problem is, then once you have the shot, the strongest possible shot, chances are that that spot is done. You'll never go back to that spot, because then it's never going to feel like as exciting. And chances are you'll never beat that one shot that you're so happy with finally, after weeks, months, or years of going back again and again. So, but that's part of the fun. That's part of the challenge. Yeah.
Know how to do your best work in your home city. Paris for you is home, is a city that you know very well. We spend hours and hours on the street, and but now I looked on your workshop calendar, and you added a new city to the calendar. Like, apart from from Rome or Paris, you have Copenhagen now.
Yes, every year I usually add 2 new cities that I only do that year. This year I wanted to go back to Rome, so I did that in April, and then I added Copenhagen in August. Next year it might be Toronto, actually, but that's how I did Berlin and Barcelona and all those cities, just places that I want to go to. And if it's a new city for me, then I usually hire a local expert for the logistics, because I can teach anywhere. I just need someone to help me design the itineraries and then come along on the photo walk, so I don't have to worry about which bus to get on, and so I can focus on my students, and then I can go anywhere. So I'm thinking of possibly adding Tokyo next year. So I kind of have a list of places I want to go to, but there are also the places that come back every year, and that's usually New York, Minneapolis, and some here. That's home base, and then Paris, of course, several times a year, and then Normandy. I have a full inclusive travel photography workshop in Normandy that's a week long. So those are every year, and then the other ones kind of change. Yeah.
Add a little surprise every now and then is a good idea. But usually your workshops, they fill up pretty quickly, so people have to be fast to book their spots. What about this year? Are there still some open spots? Or
there are some spots for the fall still, September, October. I think the rest of the year is full, but it's amazing. People see sold out, and then they don't go on the waiting list. But I always tell people, go on the waiting list, because sometimes just when one person switches workshop or they can't make it, and I have to go through 10 people on the waiting list to just fill that one spot. So I encourage people to always go on the waiting list, because even if they feel like, oh, there's no chance, there's always a chance. And sometimes I can go through the whole waiting list and people have made other plans. So it's always a good idea. Yeah. Some of them have been, selling over a year in advance, but now we're coming out of the pandemic. People were a little bit more cautious. So there are still 2022 spots available, which is fun. It's exciting to a lot more. I'm trying also to do some shorter workshops. Like, for example, Paris in October, it's 2 3-day workshops with a day off in between. So people can do one segment or can do both. So if they want to spend the week, well, they can sign up for both. And that way, because people come from Australia, so they want a longer workshop. But then a lot of Europeans don't want to do more than 3 days. And so then they can do just one of the 2 segments. They don't overlap. They complement each other. So try to do ideas so that I can have 10 people from 10 different countries, which is so much fun. I love that. That's my favorites. And that's usually the case in shorter workshops. The longer workshops, it's usually people from North America traveling to Europe, or Australia. They like the longer workshops and then Europeans like the 2-3 days. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great experience to, be on the street with you. We've missed that for a long time during COVID to go out, travel. Now there's, workshops running again.
Yes, finally. It was so good to start again last fall. And honestly, during the whole workshop, nobody even thinks about COVID. It's like 2019 all over again, and just sharing your passion with like-minded people, and the camaraderie of a workshop is so amazing. So I love it. There's no place that I'd rather be than on a workshop. Yeah.
The second best thing is to pick up your book and practice every day. But then, a workshop is the real thing, and even more fun. Valérie, thank you so much for taking the time for this interview. I highly recommend your book. It's great. It's informative, inspirational. Great read, great photos that reflect what you talked about, your style of street photography, which is a very respectful approach to street photography, very elegant, beautiful images of everyday life. So it's also a pleasure just looking at your pictures. And I think at this time, Valérie, let's open up the room for the audience that's listening in, and maybe see if there's some questions from the patrons.
Sure.
Ja, und an dieser Stelle hat sich dann noch eine rege Diskussion angeschlossen mit den Teilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmern von Abenteuer Reportagefotografie. Valérie hat sich viel Zeit genommen, die Fragen zu beantworten, und wenn auch du künftig mit dabei sein möchtest, dann schau dir das Projekt mal genauer an. Den Link sowie alle weiteren Links findest du in den Shownotes zu dieser Episode. Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören und bis zum nächsten Mal. Dein Kai.